Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to this Ramadan reminder on behalf of Akhter. Jazakumullah khair to all of the viewers, or listeners rather, for joining us today. Jazakumullah khair. My name is Brother Akhter Rouf, and I'll be presenting to you this evening a reminder about Ramadan, and I want to just make sure that everybody is hearing us okay, so I will just make sure that all of things, which looks good on my side, so I'm hoping everybody's sound is great, and that they can hear me. So first of all, Jazakumullah khair to Al-Khair organization and the brothers and sisters involved in the project for inviting me. It's a really brilliant application that they have, where they broadcast various lectures, not just leading up to Ramadan, but also all throughout the year, with various reminders, and really makes an accessibility for those who cannot get to live talks for location reasons, or maybe certain masjids just don't have the facilities to be able to do so. So first of all, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of them and really make it heavy in their scales. And today's really reminder that we wanted to talk about is a preparation for Ramadan and an action plan. And it's perfectly fine if you've not joined any of the previous Ramadan reminders that we've had on this station, because I'll just start from a beginning point, and that is that, as me and you, I'm sure, are aware, that amongst the greatest acts of worship that me and you can do is to complete the month of fasting for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam is built upon 5 pillars. The first and foremost is that of La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, the Shahadatain, and then Salah, and then Zakah, and then the 4th pillar is that of Siyam, of fasting in the month of Ramadan. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, O you people of righteousness, O you people who hold the banner of Islam, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you, like it was prescribed for those before you, like it was prescribed for nations before you. So who were the nations before us? Well, fasting goes back all the way to Noah alayhi salam, Noah and his people would fast, and then after him Moses and his people would fast, and Joseph and his people would fast, and Isa, Jesus and his people would fast, Abraham and his people would fast. In fact, all of the nations going up to Noah would be the people who would fast. So fasting is really an act that goes back centuries, and it is steeped in the way of the prophets. So, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, O you who believe, fasting has been prescribed for you, like it was prescribed for nations before you, la'allakum tattaqun. And this is the crux of the matter. The reason why we fast is not to just stay hungry and thirsty, but rather it is a means of attaining taqwa, of coming closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to building that closeness to Him by obedience and sacrifice for Him. So we sacrifice with not eating and drinking, and we sacrifice our relations with our spouses, and we sacrifice all of the things that naturally are allowed and things that we would do during the daytime. We sacrifice that, and we resist, and we are patient against that, and we discipline ourselves. And that discipline that we create, and that mechanism that we develop over 30 days becomes a habit. And then that habit, that manners and develops the heart. The Prophet ﷺ said, there is a morsel of flesh in the body, which if sound and whole, the whole body is sound and whole. And if diseased and corrupted, then the whole body is diseased and corrupted. Indeed, that morsel of flesh is the heart. So your heart and my heart, it is like a amazing wild stallion. It can go one of 2 ways. It could be a beast that, if it's not tamed and not disciplined, then it can just run rampant and go wild and do whatever it wants whenever it wants. But rather, the people that really make a difference both in this world and stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with a pure heart are those people who have disciplined and managed their whims, their desires, their pride, their their hearts' wants. They manage all of that for the sake of Allah. And that's what Ramadan does. It enables us to have taqwa. And so the way you get taqwa and the way you do that is by, first and foremost, your relationship with the Quran. And so that's why Allah says, Shahru Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. That this month of Ramadan, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only mentions the Ramadan once in the Quran, and this is it, in Surah Al-Baqarah. This month of Ramadan is the month of the Quran. It was the time, it was the occasion when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran to mankind. And it said that the first verses, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, the first verses of Quran were revealed in the last 10 days on the 24th night of Ramadan. And this is not just the case for the Quran, but previous scriptures, whether it be the Torah that was sent to Moses, whether it be the scriptures that were sent to Jesus, whether it be the Psalms that were sent to David, to Dawood, etc. and so on, all of the righteous books that were previously revealed to prophets, they were all revealed in the month of Ramadan. So Ramadan is a very special occasion. And so when we're creating a timetable or a way of planning, then it all centers around our relationship with Allah steeped in the Quran. And so whatever we're planning in terms of the 24 hours of the day, then it has to center around our relationship in the Quran. And I want to encourage me first and foremost, and then all of you, in terms of the Quran in 3 or 4 different ways. First of all, we need to have a plan for the Quran in terms of reading it. Reading it, why? In its original language. Why? Because these are the spoken words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they have great beauty and great impact in reading it in its original format. So for some of us, we maybe haven't read the Quran since we've been at a mosque, in a madrasa, when we were 10, 12 years old, and we haven't read it for the last 20, 30 years. Or some of us, we read it daily. Whatever that is, whatever portion you are able to do so, attempt to try and read the Quran in its original format. It gives great amount of reward and inspiration. The Prophet ﷺ said that you get reward for saying Alif Lam Mim. And I do not say you get one reward for Alif Lam Mim as one word, but rather Alif, i.e. one letter of the alphabet, you get 10 rewards, and Lam you get 10 rewards, and Mim you get 10 rewards. So just by saying 3 letters of the alphabet, those 3 letters of the Quran, then you get 30 rewards. So imagine the reward and the earning of reward that we can get by reading the Quran in its original language. And also we have to take a second step, and that is that in the month of Ramadan, it's no good just reading the Quran in a language, in its original language, especially for many of us who do not understand the Quran. And so the second step, the very crucial step, because this book, this guidance, is a way of living. And so it's, if I sat here and spoke to you in a totally different language, spoke in Chinese, nobody would understand what I'm saying, and you'll take very little benefit. So let's not make the Quran something just of a ritualistic act that we just read and we don't have an understanding of what it says. So some portion of the day needs to be dedicated to reading the Quran in its original language, and some portion of the day needs to be dedicated to reading that same portion of Quran or more in a language that you understand. And this is crucial. Why? Because ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. This is the book, in it is guidance. It's going to guide you. It's going to uplift your life. It's going to raise who you are. It's going to make you a better human being. It's going to make you a better worshipper of Allah, and it's going to be the mechanism, the route for which me and you go to paradise. So without knowing its meaning and understanding it, then we lose that key to that treasure. And then the third aspect of the Quran that I encourage myself and you to do is, after we're reading the Quran and we are understanding its translation or its meaning, and we really do reflect upon that, really not just read it like a book, but really internalize it, contemplate on it, figure it out, and then make it part of us. Then the third aspect is to memorize a part of it. For some of us, we may have not memorized some of the Quran for a long time, and so maybe memorizing one or two of the smaller chapters of the Quran, 5 or 6 lines in the month of Ramadan, may be the target for you. For some of us, we've memorized much more, and for us, maybe it should be that we've memorized maybe a juz or half a juz or whatever that may be. You know where you are, so you will decide that. You're the best person to really judge where you are. However, learning and memorizing a part of the Quran really does open up your prayers, really does give you greater scope to have a better relationship with the Quran. So we wake up for suhoor, or the morning of the starting of the fast, and the Prophet ﷺ would encourage the people to wake up at the suhoor time and to have something to eat or drink. And he would encourage that, and he would say that there's blessing at that time. So wherever there's an obligatory prayer, obligatory fast, then do try and wake up a few minutes before the fast begins, at least, and have something to eat and mainly something to drink, right? Me and you are fasting for 16, 17, 18 hours in a day, constantly. The rehydration, okay, we might not be outside and we might not be traveling, however, you're still going to have to rehydrate yourself before you start becoming very tired and lethargic. So really important that we drink, and there's blessing in that. So there's a blessing in and a reward in having the suhoor. Now, in that morning time, if you can wake up a few minutes before the azan for Fajr, before the fast starts, and pray, then this is one of the greatest times to pray. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of creation, he comes down to the lowest heaven on the last third of the night, and he asks, which of my worshippers are awake and asking for me, tell them I have answered their call. Which one of my worshippers has forsaken his sleep, let them know that I have returned their request. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is longing for you and me to wake up a little bit earlier in that part of the night which is the most comfortable for us, and the bed is warm and everything's nice and calm. However, that's the sacrifice that we do, right? We're shunning our own whims and desires, and we're sacrificing something and training our heart to develop something whereby we can wake up at 3:45 or 3 o'clock, 15-20 minutes before the prayer, the morning prayer begins, and before we start our fast, and we can pray two units, 2 rakahs or more. So if you can do that, please try and do that. If you can do that once a week, then set yourself a target of once a week. And if you can do that every day, then that would be an amazing thing to do. And as you're going to wake up to eat anyway, probably, then it could be something that you could set yourself a target to do every day. And so we've woken up, we've had something small and light to eat. We haven't, consumed too much food, because that's not within the spirit of fasting. And then we've prayed some 2 rakahs, we've prayed our witr before our Fajr azan, and then the prayer for Fajr comes. And now the prayer for Fajr comes, and as a household, you should be praying in congregation. You should create an atmosphere. The mosques are closed, the masajids are closed. However, the mosque exists right now in your house. Create an atmosphere and create a way that you all, as a family, pray together. And if it's just a husband and a wife, then that's fine. Pray together. And if it's a husband and wife and some of the younger household members and etc. and so on, and they're waking up and they're fasting, then pray together as a congregational prayer. And if you only know a few surahs, then just read them. No problem. However, pray together. Congregational prayer is 25 or 27 times more reward than praying by yourself. All of your 5 prayers, we're all on lockdown, all of your 5 prayers should be created in congregation to happen within your household. So we've woken up, we've had something to eat, we've prayed a little bit before the Fajr azan, we've prayed Fajr in congregation. Now don't just rush off. And also before that, pray your sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned how whoever prays the 12 sunnah, the 12 optional rakahs before the fard prayer and after the fard prayer throughout the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will create for him a house in paradise. A house in paradise, just for doing that. Part of that is the 2 sunnah before Fajr, the 4 sunnah before Dhuhr, and the 2 after, the 2 after Maghrib and the 2 after Isha. So we should be praying our sunnah. And if you're not used to praying that, start praying it. There's nowhere to go. You don't have to go to work and there's nowhere to rush. There's just the way of now you just being with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and being close to Him. And so once you've prayed your Fajr, then just take a minute. Just stay in your place and do your after prayer dhikr, your remembrance of God that you should do. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned how we should in Fajr and Maghrib recite Qul huwallahu ahad, Qul a'udhu birabbil falaq and Qul a'udhu birabbin nas 3 times. To say Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar 33 times. And all of those adhkars after each of your prayer. Don't just rush off your prayer as if it was a chore that you got out of the way and you want to run away from Allah. But just stay in that spirit and stay in that mode that you're still having a conversation with God. You're still speaking to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're still connected with your heart to Him, and that you're asking Him and you're revering Him and venerating Him and glorifying Him and saying all of those things. And now, for some of you, maybe that's been a tiresome sort of morning and you want to get back to sleep, and that's perfectly fine. Judge it how it is. For some of you, you could take the other challenge, which is to stay in your place and to say the morning adhkar and the evening adhkar. The Prophet ﷺ, and you'll find it downloadable on various apps, that you could take the morning adhkar and the evening adhkar. And those are very special. Why? Because they then lead to an opportunity to be able to come closer to Allah. So, for example, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that he would say, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la, lahul mulk walul hamd wa huwa ala kulli shayin qadir, 100 times in the morning and 100 times in the evening. This has immense reward, brings you closer to Allah. And then you would start reflecting, what does that mean? La ilaha illallah, there is none to be worthy of worship except Allah. Wahdahu la sharika la. He has no partner, there's nothing equal to Him, there's no similitude, there's no on par, there's nothing but Him. Lahul mulk walul hamd. The whole dominion of the heavens and the earth and the galaxies and the skies and everything that exists is in His power. Wa huwa ala kulli shayin qadir. And there is no power or might except with Him. And so it just humbles you to know that you are just a simple, small speck in this universe, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Akbar, He is the greatest. So say this 100 times. And there are various supplications or adhkar that you can say in the morning and the evening, which the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would say. And if you're able to do so, then try and stay up to just after sunrise. And that might be challenging, but you could give it a go. And if you can't do it every day, then maybe you could do it once a week. Maybe you could choose a Friday or a Saturday or any particular day in the week where you just stayed in your place where you prayed, and you just stayed there until just after sunrise, remembering Allah and reading the Quran. And the Prophet ﷺ said, whosoever stays in this place after sunrise and then prays 2 rak'ahs, then he gets the reward of Umrah. He gets the reward of visiting the house of God. Now, Umrah for me and for you is closed at the moment, and that's a sad thing. However, the reward of the opportunity is there. So we're now up to around the sort of like 5:45, 6 o'clock sort of mark in the morning. And now maybe it's just a time to take some rest, right? And you could have, and probably would have, started reading some Quran. So I want to give you a little tip about the Quran. I myself, I found it very difficult when I started to be serious about reading the Quran, to read the Quran for an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes at a time. I find that difficult. So what do? I just split it up into smaller parts. So rather than reading an hour and 15, an hour and 20 minutes, my challenge to me and to you is to every prayer read the Quran for 15 minutes. I think me and you can do anything we want if it was 15 minutes. You know, I could ask you to jump on a treadmill and run, and I'm sure you can make it for 15 minutes. You'll be puffing at the end of it, but you'll get it done because you'll know it's just for 15 minutes. So for just 15 minutes, read the Quran before or after every single prayer. That will add up to about an hour and a half you would have got, and you would have got so much more benefit. So reading the Quran before you go to sleep. Now your day, you've got a bit of sleep to get. Most of you are not working, or your work is flexible, and that's a great opportunity, right? For many of us, We haven't seen that in our lifetime, that we've had an opportunity to really be flexible with getting in acts of worship that we normally couldn't do because we've got to shoot off for work at 8 o'clock in the morning. Here you maybe present an opportunity because of work being flexible and the circumstance that you may be able to get much more out of your day. So as much as you plan your reading of the Quran and your acts of worship, you've got to plan your rest and your work. If you are on a contract to work, then you should be on a contract to work and you should fulfill your contract. So make sure that you worship your Lord authentically, and that means that if you have a commitment with your job, that you see your commitment to your job ethically and with full of integrity. At the same time, you'll be able to do your acts of worship. So you got some rest, and now you can, maybe you've got, for some of you, you've got kids at home and you're doing the homeschooling and they've got online lessons and etc. and so on, and you've got all of the plan of what's got to happen at 9 o'clock. They've got lessons during the workday and etc. and so on. So that's where you, as a husband and a wife, become partners. You've got to work it out. You've got to work out a way where you and your partner get some good rest, some good sleep, be able to manage the children so that they enjoy and they get the best out of it, and not just put one thing on all of the, or one partner, one of the house, and she or your wife ends up just doing all of the homeschooling, and she doesn't get any acts of worship done herself and doesn't get to enjoy Ramadan because you're doing it. So create a plan, create a strategy, something that's going to work where both of you, everybody in the household, gets the optimal. And I want to take a pause to share something that I heard the other day, where somebody mentioned to me, and he's a really good guy, just mentioned to me, you know, I'm just clear that this Ramadan is going to be the hardest Ramadan ever. And I asked him to pause and said, you know what, I'm creating the possibility that this Ramadan is going to be my best Ramadan ever. Yeah, the mosques are closed and the atmosphere of Taraweeh is not going to be there, and all of the things that I would have enjoyed on a communal level is not going to be there. I'm not going to be able to visit my family members and to open fast with them, you know, of friends and distant relatives and etc. and so on. However, I'm just committed to making sure that this is the best Ramadan ever. You and me must go into this Ramadan with that intent. If only you go into this Ramadan with that mindset, you will blow it out of the park. Really, you will do something quite amazing with your Ramadan, despite things being closed. Okay, so we're now coming to the mid-afternoon sort of Dhuhr time now. It's Dhuhr time. Again, make sure you come, prepare for your salah, do wudu beautifully. Why the Prophet ﷺ said the key to Jannah is your prayer, and the key to your prayer is to make pure ablution. So make your ablution beautifully. And this is my other tip for you, that there are so many du'as that you can read, or adhkars, or supplications that you could read throughout your day that remind you of Allah. For example, what do you say before you make wudu and after you make wudu, before you enter the bathroom, when you exit the bathroom, before you eat, when you're wearing your clothes, after you've eaten? All of these things, me and you should be training ourselves to learn those. Practice it. Have that dua on your app, on your phone, and just flick through it and read it. And within 5 or 6 days, you'll know them by heart. That you'll know that when you walk out your house, you'll say, Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. These are powerful things that you say, in the name of Allah. I have pure trust in Him. I walk out my house, I put my face mask on and my gloves on, and I have pure trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That if I get COVID-19, I get COVID-19. If I don't, I don't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have trust. Why? Because I've taken all of the steps necessary, and now, Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. So these daily, sort of adhkars, these supplications that you can say throughout the day, all of them lend you towards the purpose of Ramadan, which is taqwa, to increase your heightened awareness and closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we're praying our Dhuhr. Don't forget to pray your sunnah beforehand. Maybe get to your musalla 10 or 15 minutes before. Read some Quran there in the Arabic language, and then take a portion of that Quran and read it in a language that you understand. Now, For some of you, you may be finding that you've been up since 6, 7 o'clock and done all the kids, and maybe that mid-afternoon after you've prayed Dhuhr is a time for you to rest. Perfect. Plan it out. Make sure that it works so that you can get the best amount of rest that you need to, so you can be fresh in your worship. For some of you, you've got to get to work afterwards and get back to doing that and remembering Allah at the same time. And also for some of you university students, whoever's off, and people who are furloughed and etc. and so on, or got no work and no contracts, then you're freer now. Go find some online classes or something that's going to help your relationship with the Quran. It's all about the Quran. So anything that's going to remind you more of Allah, and especially with your relationship with the Quran, you should sign up to. Whether they be online classes on how to read, how to understand it, explanations, etc. and so on and so forth. And Ustadh Masood will be doing a daily explanation of the Quran, which we'll talk about as part of your daily schedule in a little while. You could probably tune into Akhter on this app and be listening to that, inshallah. So we're doing something, and then you've got to also try and involve the kids, involve the family. And some people ask, what should we do in terms of encouraging the kids to fast? And that's a tough one, because you know your kids, so you'll judge it. You'll judge how they can last with the day, and etc. and so on. However, I did like what one of my teachers would say. He would say that I would encourage the children to fast so they get to enjoy the atmosphere and build a love for it. However, I would just judge how old they are. And so if they were like 7 years old, I would say, okay, fast for 7 hours. And so they wouldn't fast for the entire day. They'd have breakfast at normal time. They might have a late lunch at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they'd fast it for 7 hours. Or, some of the kids, they're very enthusiastic, and they're not going to school and not doing a lot of exercise and PE and studies and so on. So now they can fast. And whoever's adult, i.e. over the age of puberty, then they should all be fasting. That is an obligation. That is what God expects, and they are able to do so. They are physically able to do so, then they should be doing so. So some who are younger, then they might want to fast one day and then have a day off and then fast the next day. Okay, so we're now coming up to the mid-afternoon sort of time. And we've just been relaxed. We've read a bit of Quran throughout the day. We're learning. We're increasing our relationship with the Quran. We're conscious of what we speak. Remember, fasting is not just about your stomach fasting. Your eyes have to fast. So that means stop watching things that are going to take you closer to the hellfire. Stop all of that filthiness. Stop wasting your time on binging on Netflix and all of that sort of stuff. And just manage yourself in terms of that. Right, you are going to have to manage yourself in this month, because there's very little community now, because we're so, spread apart, which is brilliant, because you're going to, whatever you create in this Ramadan, it's all down to you. You do it or you don't do it, it's all about your self-discipline and your relationship with God. And so you're going to prove something really amazing. You're going to really come out of this Ramadan saying, you know what, nobody was watching me, nobody forced me to go to the mosque or gave me a lecture or whatever, and I did whatever I wanted to do, and I did some amazing, amazing acts of worship. So we're coming to the Asr prayer now, the evening prayer. Now you've rested well, you've done your work, you've got all of those duties, you've looked after the kids and done some homeschooling, but the kids are still around and they're maybe playing about and etc. and so on and so forth. Now congregate again for Asr. Read some Quran before. Make sure you're up to date with your Quran reading. And me and you should have a target for how much Quran we want to read in the month of Ramadan. And my genuine request is that you should be, if you read one whole completion of Quran last year, then you should be aiming for at least 1.5 this year. And if you read 1.5 last year, then you should be aiming for 2. Whatever it is last year has to be more in terms of quantity, and most importantly, more in terms of your heart and your connection with God. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to try and pick up the speed a little bit now. So we've come to Asr, we prayed Asr. Then you've got a time to start reading the Quran in a language that you understand. Reflect upon it. You're coming to the evening time. Ustadh Masood is doing his daily explanation of juz by juz, a spara by spara, and he'll probably be broadcasting, I'm sure, on this app every day. I believe it's going to be around 7 p.m. Look out for the infographic for that. It's absolutely brilliant. He takes one juz of the Quran and really dissects it and breaks it down into comprehensible, understandable parts, which really do make a big difference to your understanding of the Quran. So do make sure that you tune into that. Have a schedule for where you involve the children and the family, and have it as a family activity that they come and they all listen together and support them in their learning. You've got the evening adhkars that you need to do, like you did in the morning, the evening adhkars that you need to make. And then you've got preparation now for iftar. Now, food is a big thing, and food is not as available as it was, and it shouldn't be, and this is great. This is great training for us. At the same time, me and you need to not break the whole spirit of fasting. The whole spirit of fasting is that we eat less, drink less, or a reasonable amount, but definitely eat less, and really manage our own whims and desires when it comes to food and drink. So it's ironic that we fast for 15, 16 hours, and when it comes to the fasting opening time, we scoff our face and have 3 meals in one. It just doesn't work. It's just not within the spirit of fasting. So manage your food. And the Prophet ﷺ said, eat 1/3 of your stomach full, 1/3 for water, and 1/3 for breathing. Just follow that formula. Eat 1/3, drink 1/3, and 1/3 to be able to breathe. And you will have an amazing sort of health features and well-being, physically as well as mentally. So you come to Maghrib prayer now, and you're getting ready for opening your fast. The Prophet ﷺ would make dua and make the supplication before opening the fast. Is one of the times where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would answer the prayer. And dua, asking Allah throughout the day and throughout the evening, is an amazing way for asking whatever you want. You may have ill family members, you have maybe have financial difficulties, you just want the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You want Allah to accept everything that you've done, and you want Him to guide you and your family and all of your friends and all of your loved ones to paradise. Whatever that may be, make dua throughout the day, and especially just before you're breaking your fast. Then once you've broken your fast, again, congregate for Maghrib prayer now. Come together, pray Maghrib together, eat together, have dinner together, break your fast together, have that community spirit, that family spirit in your household. So you're all coming together and you're all enjoying, you're all supporting each other. Some days people are going to feel a bit tired. Some days people are going to get a bit ratty. Some people are going to get claustrophobic, that they're stuck in their house. All of those things are going to happen as normal emotions. And you're going to be there to support everyone so that as a family, have an amazing Ramadan. And so we've prayed our Maghrib, we've prayed our Sunnah, we've done our Adhkar, and now we've eaten, and now we're getting ready for Isha prayer. And you should be praying some portion during the night. And you'll say to me, well, Taraweeh and the masjids are closed. And it's interesting, if you look at the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, he only prayed Taraweeh in congregation 3 or 4 times, if I'm not mistaken, in his whole lifetime. The majority of time he prayed the night prayer, he would pray alone in his house. So you can do the same. Or you could do it in congregation together. You as a family could get together and you could pray your Taraweeh or your Qiyamul Layl or your night prayer together in congregation. And if you're not a Hafiz of Quran, then that's fine. Maybe you can hold the Mus'haf, the Quran, in your hand, and you could try and complete the reading of the Quran as a Taraweeh that you might want to do, especially for the elders. If you have parents who have never missed Taraweeh in their life, then maybe that's an amazing thing for you to do with them. So after your Isha prayer, try and make sure that you spend some portion of the night worshipping Allah. I want to finish in the next 3 or 4 minutes, but I want to also just remind you of random acts of worship that you and me could be doing throughout the month of Ramadan. Right? First and foremost, me and you should make sure that we give in charity throughout the month of Ramadan, because there are causes there, people in all over, especially in the UK as well as all over the world, they are in need of financial assistance. People are much more on the poverty line now due to the lockdown than they were previously. People need charitable support to be able to reconcile their income with their expenditure. People in third world countries are dying. Wherever you look, people need support. You need to give from your charity, from the thing that you love, your money and your wealth, and you need to sacrifice that for God. And you might not have much, but whatever it is, give it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, never does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decrease the person's wealth when they give it in charity for His sake. So give and spend in the path of Allah. Second thing I advise you to do is reconcile with all of your broken relationships, all of your broken promises, all of your broken communications with friends, neighbors, ex-business partners, relatives, people abroad, people you haven't spoken to, people your family have broken up with. Forget it. It's all a waste of time. It's just looking good, and it's just arrogance. Forget all of that pride and just put it all to one side and just phone up that person and say, you know what, we're in a very difficult worldwide situation, and I don't know if I'm going to see you as a family member or as a friend or as a ex-business partner beyond Ramadan. And I'm just going to clear my heart and say, you know what, I have no rancor or ill feeling towards you, and I hope you have no rancor or ill feeling towards me. A man came into the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ, and before he came in, the Prophet ﷺ said, the next person who walks in is a person of paradise. And so he walked in, and it's interesting that the narration, the story doesn't even mention the person's name. He wasn't a famous companion. It wasn't like he was Abu Bakr. So he walked in, and then the Prophet ﷺ and the companions thought, okay, just him, like what's so special about him? So one of the companions asked if he could stay with him for 3 days. After staying with him for 3 days, he said to him, I don't see anything special about you. You know, I've seen people who go out in the middle of the night and feed the poor and look after the orphans and read loads of Quran and pray. And so I didn't see any of that. He said, you're right. I don't have any of that. He said, but the Prophet ﷺ said that you're a person of paradise. He said, the only thing I have is when I put my head on my pillow, I go to sleep not having ill feeling against any person, and that no person having ill feeling against me. Imagine me and you could live our lives that complete. That would be so powerful that not a single human being has an ill feeling against us, and we do not have an ill feeling against a single human being. This would be spectacular for us to have. So completing all of that, apologizing for mistakes that you may have made, disrespecting our elders or our parents or our siblings or whoever that may be, and creating a real atmosphere of love in our household, that would be so amazing to do. The third thing that I encourage you to do is to support each other beyond just your normal communication within your household. Phone up your old friends, phone up people, check up on how they're doing, see their well-being, see how they're taking care of themselves, inspire them to come closer to Allah. This is a special, special moment. This is the month of Ramadan. This is not no ordinary circumstance that we find ourselves. So the greater the difficulty in circumstance, the greater the reward that me and you can get. So I would encourage you, on top of all of your daily acts of worship, and then see what you can do. My final request to you all is to do something in this month of Ramadan that you have never done before in your life. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what it will be for you. I have an idea of what it will be for me. So I'm going to be challenging you and me to do something that you, as a way of getting closer to Allah, that you and me have never done in our life before. For some of you, it may be that you've never prayed 5 times a day for the whole month of Ramadan. For some of you, it may be to wake up the last third of the night. You've never done that before. For some of you, it may be that you send food to your neighbors every day in the month of Ramadan. For some of you, it may be that every day you give £10 to a different cause, and nobody knows. I don't know what it will be, and you'll think of it. But be creative and make this Ramadan a month in which you have done an act of worship which you could never or have never done before. It will be so spectacular in how you create and finish a powerful month of Ramadan. And then the final thing is to have steadfastness, to have istiqamah. It's not going to be easy. You know, after the initial thrill of Ramadan starting, then we start getting into a routine and we take it for granted. And then slowly we start praying a little bit later and being a bit lazier and being a bit slower. No. You've got to be that tomorrow's going to be, the day that I'm in right now was going to be better than yesterday. And tomorrow's going to be better than today. And you've just got to keep on creating that and creating that and creating that and raising the bar every time. I want to thank you all for Jazakumullah khair for listening. Thank you all for tuning in, inshallah. It took a little bit longer than what I wanted to speak about. Apologies. And I know it's hard to listen attentively without any sort of visual communication. But I want to thank you all for tuning in. Jazakumullah khair to all of the brothers and sisters from Al Khair for inviting me to address you today. Inshallah, we hope you benefited from it. Look out for Al Khair's programs that they'll be launching throughout Ramadan, and you'll see the infographics of various lectures. And for any of the lectures that I do myself, then you're more than welcome to ask the Al Khair team, and I'm sure they'll provide some further details of some of the programs and the sermons that I deliver in this month. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you all. Have a great Ramadan. Make dua constantly for Allah to accept it from us, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise our rank, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive all of us, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to send a cure for humanity for this COVID-19, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to safeguard our family, our children, our parents, to safeguard all of those people, and to give patience to those people who have lost loved ones. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us of those people who are forgiven. The Prophet ﷺ said that whoever fasts in the month of Ramadan with iman, with true faith, and expecting the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, غَفَرَ اللَّهُ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive all of their sins. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our month of fasting when we achieve it, and to accept all of our acts of worship. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.